We all remember recess growing up in school. Recess was a time of day where you could have all the conversations that you could not have while in class. Recess is where you had the real conversations. And real conversations we're going to have. In each episode of the Recess Podcast, I'm going to have real conversations explaining students and school. I'm David McGuire, and I'll be your host. It's recess time, y'all. Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Recess Podcast. I'm your host, David McGuire. Wonderful to be here, despite the circumstances, but was glad I was able to jump on. I have three very special guests with me, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation about something that I think a lot of people, not just in Indianapolis, but a lot of people around the country, have their mixed feelings about. And so this opportunity tonight is we're going to kind of dispel some of those myths. So it's the title of the show, Dispelling the Myths of Teach for America, but we're specifically going to talk about Indianapolis. So I want to welcome everybody to the Recess Podcast. If you're tuning in, please share this link, like it. If you're on Facebook, we love comments, so please make sure you comment. We'll get those posted. If you share the link, I ask that you don't do the watch party because it takes away the option of the comment. And the best part of the show is when we're able to comment with those interacting. So we're going to jump right in. Again, this is the Recess Podcast. I'm David McGuire, and tonight's episode is Dispelling the Myths. But before we do that, I would be negligent and remiss if I didn't just take the time to kind of talk about what's going on. And so if you could just bear with me, everybody, before we jump in, I'm going to jump into this 8-minute and 45-second soliloquy. But really, for me, it's a tribute to the Black people, tribute to Black people who died at the hands of police officers. So many of you know that Colin Kaepernick had a Nike campaign last year that centered on the message: if you believe in something, it means you're willing to sacrifice everything. And so I asked myself that question daily, like, am I willing to sacrifice everything to fight for a better education for Black children, right? And so for me, the Recess Podcast has become my own answer. But we have an opportunity here, right? The unfortunate death of Black men at the hands of police officers has given us a platform. But the million-dollar question is, what are we going to do with that platform, right? What are we going to do once the last person has marched down the streets? See, we got to keep this energy, and we got to keep applying the pressure to those elected in leadership, because the system is waiting for us to get tired. The system is waiting for us to give up, because in their minds, we won't last. We won't keep this going. So they're just going to try to wait us out. So the only way that we're going to get the things that we want is we got to keep applying the pressure. So I ask that everybody be diligent, to continue to fight. Those that, if their advocacy and your activism is marching, continue to march until we get what we need. Do not stop, because that's what they're waiting on. If you have a platform, use your platform. If you have a voice in the social media, use that. Whatever your gift is, a part of this fight, I ask that you use it. But also, in this activism, it's important, right? I'm a teacher, so it's important that you educate yourself. And so I have compiled a list of books and suggested readings for those of you that just joined this movement of pro-Black. And so my suggested reading list for you: you have The Fire Next Time and Native Son by James Baldwin. You have Sister Outsider. You have the autobiography of Malcolm X. I encourage you to listen to Malcolm X's speech, Ballot or Bullet. You have Stamped from the Beginning. You have listening to speeches of Martin Luther King, I've Been to the Mountaintop, and The Other America. I encourage you to read The Miseducation of the Negro, Between the World and Me, What Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Blacker, Freedom is a Constant Struggle, and The Bluest Eyes Ever. So these are just some of the books and things I suggest you listen to. I'll post these on my social media. But if those of you that have just joined this fight, it's important that you also educate yourself about the historical struggle of Black people. Because what you don't understand, COVID isn't the only pandemic for Black people. We've been dealing with a pandemic for 400 years, and it's called racism. And for 400 years, we've been looking for a vaccine, and we still ain't got it. So, again, I encourage you to educate yourself, to read up on these books, because, again, I don't know if we can make everybody woke, but we damn sure can make them uncomfortable being asleep on this issue. So, for those of you that ask, I haven't posted too much or anything like that, I need you to understand something. I've been woke since August 21st, 2006. When as an 18-year-old kid, I walked into Dr. Eugene Bailey's English class on the campus of Central State University. So I've been about this life. So those that just got a part of it, I don't need you coming for me, asking me to say anything, because I've been about this. And this ain't for me. I don't need the shooting deaths of Black men at the hands of police officers to wake me up. All right? So I'm off my soapbox. I just thought it was important that I get that out. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say, or if you just want to jump right into it. I got more I can say. I could definitely say it, but I want to open the floor before we talk about the topic. Is there anything on you all's mind pressing with everything going on that you want to share? Jump in if you want, or just say, I'm good. I'll save my speech for later on in the show.
I'm going to go ahead and say I'm good. I feel as though it's really important to articulate yourself well in these moments. And part of me is still very emotional. And so it's difficult for me to do that right now. So I'll save my spiel for later.
and look, and it's okay. Like, people are saying, you have to be okay with not being okay, right? We've seen that float around social media, right? You have to be okay with not being okay. I think what Pastor John said, if this doesn't bother you, there's something wrong with you. If you're not shaken, whatever term you want to use about this, there's literally something wrong with you. And so I definitely understand. Max or Stephanie, anything you guys want to say?
I think my only piece, and I want to say it in the sense of, like, as a white person to other white people involved in this, is like elevating the Black voices means that you don't add your comment necessarily. Sometimes it just means that you give them the floor, whether that be on Instagram, you just share the story without saying anything. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not our place, right? Yeah. Like, our place is to use our platform and our privilege to give the road to them, because y'all haven't had it. And you need it.
Absolutely. Love that.
I just want to make sure, like, to serve as like a reminder to make sure that you are checking your sources. Make sure that you are not just relying on social media, Facebook or Twitter as like your news source, and be like very fact checking your things. I think it's super important, and it's easy to get lost in like all the social media posts and articles that are shared.
Absolutely. Also, I want to shout out the folks that are standing in those lines voting. I know it's crazy, right? And again, we talk about the system. The system decided to only open up 22 polling sites, right? The system decided to only mail out absentee ballots to certain people, even though I know tons more people suggest that they wanted an absentee ballot, right? Because again, they don't want our voice to be heard, right? So they're going to create the conditions and the situations where we won't be heard. So again, I encourage all of you to continue that's out there, stay diligent, stick through it, right? Let your voice be heard in those voting ballots. So again, take your time. I know it's hot. If I was available, I would bring some water, but I know there's some folks out there taking water to folks, and so definitely encourage everybody to do that as well. So keep doing that. Got folks already jumping into the comments, so love that. Again, this is the Recess Podcast, and we're here dispelling the myths of Teach for America. I know if you first logged in, you was like, what are they? Thought they were talking about Teach for America. Now we're going to get there. It just was important that we had things that we needed to say. And it's very important that we say those things now. So we're going to jump in, right? And so I'm going to put the three of you on the spot because I wrote a little autobiography about Teach for America. So all my Teach for America folks in Indianapolis that is listening, that's watching, please jump in the comments and fact check me if I got anything wrong. I had to do my research, but you know how sometimes the internet can be. You can get your facts wrong, but I did look at multiple sources. So tonight I have three Teach for America cohort members with me. We will be discussing myths that exist within Teach for America, specifically Indianapolis. For those of you that don't know, Teach for America is the brainchild and senior thesis of founder Wendy Cope when she was at Princeton. The thesis was an idea to quickly turn around and train outstanding college graduates to go into high poverty schools. So this was 1989. So now we're almost 30 years later talking about Teach for America. It's in multiple cities, specifically Indianapolis, and it wasn't until 2008 when Teach for America and the Mind Trust championed bringing Teach for America here. And so now we're over a decade in. Again, I've had my mixed feelings about Teach for America. I didn't get in coming out of college, so that made me a little upset and anti-Teach for America for a beginning. But I got over that. But I've been able to have the opportunity to work with some amazing educators and friends of mine that are Teach for America. I've met some amazing people. And honestly, I educated myself on what Teach for America was about. And I didn't fall into some of those myths that we're going to dispel this evening. So you got a fan and an advocate in me. I have Teach for America members in my building, and they've been amazing. I got 2 last year that are amazing. I have 3 this year that I know are going to be amazing. So I'm really excited about that. So let's jump in. So I do a segment every time called Can Y'all Explain This? So there is an article, and I will share it. It's an article floating around social media, and the title is Teachers Must Hold Themselves Accountable for Dismantling Racial Oppression. In the piece, the author says, we must commit to teaching in a way that totally disrupts and dismantles the system of oppression. So my question for you, 3 individuals who are going back into the classrooms in the fall, whether it's physically or virtually, but let's all pray or whatever, fast, whatever we do, that we get going in the fall, that we're back in the schools. But my question for you is, why do you feel it's important for teachers going into next year to have this accountability to make sure that we're fighting through racial oppression in schools? So anybody want to jump in? It's just whoever wants to go first. Taylor, you gonna go first? I'm gonna just cold call you. I'm gonna cold call you. So I'll put the question back up. What obligation do teachers have next year to dismantle racial oppression in schools?
Okay, so I think when you look at historically the racial oppression that has happened in general, right? Schools upheld it the most, and they still do to this day. Whether it be, I don't know, the way they retain kids, what they teach kids. Think about history books and stuff. I won't even lie to you. I didn't learn real African-American history or African history until I got to college, right? And I went to private schools my whole life. So I think as teachers, if we ever want to see racial oppression dismantled, it has to start with us in our classrooms. How are we bringing these kids up from day one? What are we teaching them? What stories are we telling them? And how do we give them the tools that they need to go out into the world and fight it and conquer it and do the things that we need to do, whether our kids be Black, brown, white, green, whatever the case may be, just keeping it real with them and what it is that they need to go out and be successful in this world.
Absolutely.
My intersectional point is that I am in lower elementary special education, and statistically, Black people are entered into the special education process at a higher rate that is kind of disproportionate into what like their actual like eligibility status is. Like special education has a beautiful purpose, but there's a lot of people who are suffering from trauma, from like another underlying medical condition that like systemic poverty and systemic racism has been affecting. So when I think of like what I need to do as a teacher, it's like I need to hold space and collect as many resources as possible to ensure that the scholars I'm working with and their peers are getting every support that they need so that they can succeed and have a life of choice, because someone getting shunted into special education might cut them off from a series of choices, including college, certain career options, and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with Max that like it's super important that teachers have to have those resources, but I also think that teachers need to be doing the work, kind of how you mentioned, like making sure they're caught up on readings and making sure they're like aware of what their students are experiencing, and not necessarily saying that you have to be empathetic for what they feel when not, but know what's going on so that you're aware and try to figure out ways that you can support them. I think for myself specifically, it's nice that I bring that Hispanic background to my school, because they're small, but no one really thinks about the Hispanic populations like at my school, because it's predominantly Black. So I stay aware and try to bring those resources also to like my school.
Absolutely. I think, teachers next year is going to be different, right? Not even just with COVID and that adjustment, but now this, the uproar in America, right? Where we're 2020, man. Listen, 2020 has been like, it's been that year, right? With, man, listen, we lost Kobe, right? Like that started it off, right? I think, and then everything happening now, like it's just going to be a different space. And I think, but the one thing that is now back in the forefront is how, the system is not necessarily designed for and this is separate from the shooting. So the system's not designed for like students of color, right? So whether it's Black and Latinx, right? So we have a responsibility, right, to make sure that they overcome the system as best they can and rise through it, because we have examples of Latinx and Black people who've risen through the system, right? We put a Black man in the White House, and we have a Latinx woman sitting on the Supreme Court justice, right? So like those are opportunities where we have overcome, and so I just think it's important. So that's our segment of Can You Explain This? Now we're gonna jump into the actual show. So you guys have been talking, folks don't even know who you are. So I'm gonna ask the first question, but before you answer, I want you to kind of just introduce the folks who you are. You know, your name, if you're from Indy, if you're not, you know, what school you represent, what grade, whatever you want to talk about, so people know who you are before we jump in. So I'll just jump right in. So how did you hear about Teach for America, and what was the reason for joining? So Stephanie, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I am in a multicultural sorority called Kappa Delta Chi, and a lot of my sisters are heavy TFA alum, involved in some shape or form. They're like out here recruiting, canvassing for TFA at Arizona State, which is my alma mater. I'm from Arizona. And so ASU is one of the biggest TFA recruiters. I think it's like top 3 or top 5, probably wrong. But I'm from Arizona. I'm a first generation Mexican American that did not plan on moving to Indianapolis, but TFA relocated me all the way over here. I remember when I got my offer, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay here, probably like down the street. And then it's like Indianapolis. It's like, where is that? What? So it was my first time experiencing the Midwest. My first snow. It was the first time it rained here. I thought I was gonna die. So, it was it's still like an experience. Like the other day when the tornado warning went off, I was like, I was in a boyfriend. I was like, we gotta hide. So I teach at Circle City Prep, and we've been doing tornado drills. And I was like, this is how you hide. Like, we'll be fine. And then he was like, you're so weird. Like, no, that's not what we do here. It'll go off. So it's been an experience.
Well, I think now you brought some of that Arizona sunshine, man. It's been hot these past couple of days, man. I lost my breath. Right, absolutely. So Max, same question. You know, what brought you to TFA? What's your reasoning, and then just who you are?
Yeah, so I'm originally from rural Missouri. I'm from a lower income like background. Like my grandparents are farmers. First generation college student, first generation graduate student. I come from a theater background. My first encounter with Teach for America was acting as a Teach for America teacher in a play that my friend wrote about her time in the Delta. She reflected on her experience as like a white Teach for America teacher in the Mississippi Delta. She wrote a play, produced it in grad school when I was at Ohio State, or the Ohio State. Buckeye connection. So that was my first encounter with it. And so like it wasn't a positive experience for her. So like, I was like, okay, noted. Move the story forward. I'm in Cleveland and I'm a teaching artist. So like I'm embedded full-time doing a social, emotional, and theater curriculum in a Cleveland metro school. So I'm functioning as like an enrichment teacher there, contracted through like a local theater. And I'm working alongside Teach for America teachers at this point, both people who matriculated through and people who are still in it. And I'm spending 4 days a week teaching in Teach for America schools. And I'm engaging with young people, and like my consciousness is widening further and further, which, you know, had a lot to grow as like a rural white kid. And I began to really see both like the untapped potential of young people and how these communities have been like both underserved and like under-identified, and like seeing how much they could grow when given meaningful work and like meaningful opportunities. And so I realized that with my career, with having a family, like I want to spend my time in the school. Right. And so I knew that like education is where I'm going to shift my life. And so my wife and I had a conversation. She's from Indiana. I applied to ITF and I missed the deadline. So I applied for Teach for America Indianapolis and landed in special education, and been pretty happy ever since.
Rest is history. Yeah. My professor was from Missouri, the show me state.
Yeah.
She said, yep. I can show you better than I can tell you. That's what she always told me. So absolutely. Taylor, I'm assuming you're from Ohio State. You went to Ohio State. Okay. I gathered that in the midst of that. So same question, what was the reason for Teach for America, who you are, all that good stuff.
So I am Taelor Garret. I will be teaching upper elementary at KIPP next year, KIPP Indy Unites. I am a graduate of the Ohio State University. And I was introduced to TFA in college. So I knew I had some friends who were a few years older than me who began joining TFA. They did TFA right out of undergrad. And to be completely honest, the first time I applied, I got denied, which is all great, right? So it wasn't time for me. But I literally remember, I think like one of the prompts is, why do you want to join Teach for America? And I was like, well, I love kids, but I'm really not sure what I'm doing after undergrad. So I'm just applying. And it just wasn't the right time. So I ended up going the first 5 years out of undergrad, I actually spent time in the healthcare industry. And while I was really good at my job and everything that I did, there was still a part of me missing. So like I said, I love working with kids. I've always loved working with kids, and I didn't quite know where that fit in my life. So I was working part-time, even with a full-time career, I was working part-time at the YMCA in Columbus. And it was just that part that fulfilled me the most. So now I'm trying to figure out, do I stay with this company where I can potentially retire from in 20 years, or do I go and try to do something I'm a little more passionate about? And so I applied for Teach for America again, and I got in. Indianapolis, like Steph said, was way down on my list. If they give me number 9, and only because I have family here. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise that I got placed here, have been able to spend this time with my family and just really learned so much about all of it.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm glad Teach for America was able to, or Teach for America Indy was able to like tap in and pull you guys from the places that you wanted to go to and bring you here. So shout out to all those folks that for America Indianapolis that brought you guys here. So again, if you're just tuning in, this is the Recess Podcast, Dispelling the Myths of Teach for America. I have 3 incredible Teach for America Indianapolis teachers. I want to bold Indianapolis for you. And we're going to dispel some myths. So if you're tuning in on Facebook, share, pass it to a friend. We're also on the YouTube page, the Recess Podcast. If you're on Facebook, again, jump in the comments. We're going to get those posted. Share the video. Don't do a watch party, but share the video. So let's jump in. Again, it's like double dutch. I don't care who. Just jump in when it's your turn. So myth number 1. This was actually the one that kind of like turned me against like Teach for America in the beginning. So I'll read it. TFA is just a resume builder, and the majority of people who join are doing this just to get a better job outside of education after their 2-year commitment. So true or false?
I don't think you can get through the TFA experience if that's your goal, right? I feel like a lot of folks who have that mindset like get weeded out really quick by like the actual experience of teaching. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, right? Like, this is what I wanted. And I came I came from theater. It's like, oh, this is gonna be easy. Like, nope, so wrong. Like, right? Like, I mean, I don't think anyone who goes in with that viewpoint, and like maybe there's been like, I feel like maybe I've heard of some folks who do it, but a lot of people who do like get converted by the experience, and then they end up sticking around in education in some capacity or serving in these communities.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I asked my question specifically, right? So because I get now the idea, right, that you do this, but you stay within the fight. That's why I said they get a job outside of education, right? We're going to get to like school in the classroom later, but the first one was just a resume builder for that. So Taylor, Stephanie, right? Is it just a resume builder?
So it's definitely, let's just say it is a phenomenal resume builder, right? It's kind of like, showing that you are a graduate of the Ohio State University and you're entering the largest alumni population in the nation. It's one of those things. People see that you've done it and it's like, great. But like Max said, just to second that, this is not one of those things that you're going to jump into and think you just going to ride by and get to the end so that you do have it on your resume. This is crazy tough work. And I think the only way to get through it is to have a passion for it. And so I know friends who actually wanted to use it as a resume builder, right? And so now that they're really still in this work, they're also like, wait a minute, everything that I thought I wanted to do has kind of changed. And even if they do decide to leave the classroom, it has still centered around education and fighting that inequity. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with Taylor that a lot of the people that I know that when they apply for TFA, it was just like, oh, I don't know what to do with my life, or I need to like kind of promote my resume, make it a little more shinier, polish it up. So I'm going to do TFA. But then it's either how Max said, they get weeded out because like life was too hard or for like their own reasons, right? Or they just stick it out and they're like, oh, wow, I just had like a revelation and now this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So those have been more of my experiences that I've noticed that people sometimes they start off with like a different mindset, but once they're in, their mindset completely changes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm gonna give my little 2 cents. Listen, if it is a resume builder, kudos to you. Shoot, listen, man, forget what people say. Hey, listen, if it's a resume builder and you get you a better job and better opportunities for your family and give you a platform to do better, to ultimately remember, right, what you learned from Teach for America about the inequities of children of color in low-income schools. And if you get a job, make sure you take that job and whatever privilege comes with that job and just give something back. I think if you do that, and what I'm assuming, based off her book I read and what I know about Teach for America, right, that was the essence and the purpose, right? So that's just my little 2 cents. But anyway, myth number 2. Now, this is slightly different than the first question, but it's kind of the same. So majority of TFA teachers exit the classroom and schools after fulfilling their 2-year commitment, right? So like, is that the experience that you guys know, that you heard? And again, we're talking about Indy, right? So we can't really talk about Arizona or the Mississippi Delta or New York. We're just talking about Indy. So from what you've heard and been in it, is that true? Like they leave after they leave school and classrooms after the 2-year commitment, or do people stick around?
I've seen the opposite. I'm actually surprised. And I know you said like, don't think about Arizona, but I've seen like the crazy how like Indy people actually like stay. And at first when I was over here, I was like, why would you want to stay here? Like this place sucks. And then but like it's grown on me. And I'm like, oh, see, it's actually not that bad. And so this is also why I'm like, oh, at the beginning I was like, oh, I don't want to be here for like the 2 years. But now I'm like, oh, here I am staying another year, potentially staying even more. So I think that yes, there's some people that like exit out, and yes, there's some people that stay. But I think there's like a equal, like not an equal balance, but there's like a balance of who does stay and who leaves. I don't know if you guys, Max and I are in the same like cohort year. But I think for our cohort, like that's how.
Yeah, I think as far as like Indy's concerned, like our percentage is actually really high of those who remain in the education sector. And I'm curious, like how much of that is just like Indianapolis is sort of like unique education context in terms of like how schools operate. But like, I think it was like 70% or something of like TFA Indy alum stay in education, in the classroom or like in admin or operations. Like they are remaining as a part of the fight. And then like, there's like some other percentage that's like in sort of the surrounding like social work macro world.
Man, shout out 70%. Listen, shout out Indy. Better. That's better than these teacher preparation programs. I'll tell you that. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Let me not, please. My traditional people, I'm traditional, right? So listen, I can talk about it, right? We don't do a good job. And I think I'm gonna say this. If we were doing our job in the traditional world, I'm pretty sure TFA wouldn't have been around this long. But that's my 2 cents. Taylor, what's your thoughts on this notion they leave?
I think since we're specifically talking about Indy, I think Indianapolis and Teach for America Indianapolis does a really good job of retaining their teachers and people in education in general. So kind of like Max and Steph were saying, I don't know too many people who have left. What surprises me even more are the people who have left Indianapolis after their 2 years and still come back. Again, kind of like, whoa, you really came back to this place? So yeah, like I have a friend specifically who did Teach for America, and she's a 2013 alum, and girl is brilliant, right? Like had all of these different job offers coming out of undergrad that I'm sure like now she would be making six figures, and she's still in the classroom today. So yeah, we definitely stay. Don't believe the hype.
Absolutely. All right. So myth number 3, and this one, you know what? This one is important to me. So I'm really curious to get you all's thoughts. And then again, if this is the Recess podcast, we are dispelling some myths of Teach for America. So again, share, like, comment. Those Teach for America folks that are listening, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, jump in this as well. We want to hear your thoughts as well. So jump in with your thoughts about these myths. So the third one says, TFA proved that it does not take much training to be an effective teacher. True or false?
Oh.
I feel like this is a boiling point for all TFA teachers. It's like,
yeah, here we go.
Ooh.
Yeah, okay.
No,
Let's go.
So yes, they send us off to Institute for what? 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks, and we come back, and I am not going to lie to you. No, absolutely nothing. So that's definitely not the case. What I think we see is a lot of schools that we are plugged into doing their part and making us effective teachers at the end of the day. It takes a lot of hard work and training and having the right people there to coach you. Otherwise, no, Marcus says ineffective for the year.
I mean, from my context, special education, which has like a lot of discrete discipline skills and like paperwork and law that I'm required to know, like, no, because like, yes, I went to institute just like y'all, but like they didn't buff us on special education. It ended up falling to like Marian University, who was like the Teach for America's partner in some of their training. So like my graduate degree from Marian was like a key component, a key lever in my training that like TFA was using, because Marian University has these experienced special educators, and they know both ITF and TFA are going through this like matriculation program and like are giving them like the brass tack skills to do this very nuanced position that like I'm in. Like, no, like it was not all the training at once and then I go to the classroom. Mm-hmm. Like some of my colleagues, it was on the job, continual, at night, coming in the next morning, on the weekend. Like it was a grind.
Absolutely. Yeah, grind. Yep.
It's a grind.
And for the people that are viewing, like in case you didn't know, TFA does like how Taylor was saying, the intensive 5-week summer training, and then it's like you're teaching, and then after you're done teaching in the morning, which you're like helping out with like local summer schools, you go and do your own schooling, and so you're stuck in the classroom like getting fed all this information of how do you teach, what do you teach, how do you make a lesson plan? Okay, now we're gonna break up into groups and make your own lesson plan. And for me, like this was interesting because it was the first time that I was learning all of this. But I think what I learned the most from summer training was like what my identity and working on my identity and like learning what privilege I have. Because coming in, I was like, oh, I'm not privileged. I'm first generation. I come from a low income background. Like there's no privilege on my end. And then like coming to terms of like what privilege meant and how I am like an asset, if that makes sense. To my students, because I'm bringing in that like different experience and then I'm exposing them to my students. Especially coming from like the Southwest. My kids I teach kindergarten. They don't know what Arizona, they don't even know what Indianapolis is. Like you have to teach them, this is your city, this is your home, this is the state you live in. I live all the way over here. And so now like bringing that, and how Max is saying, like we also have Marian and we have TFA, like professional development. And then I got lucky where I was placed in a starter school. So I got heavy coaching, heavy coaching, which is great because I came in and I couldn't even like redirect the kid. I was always smiling. and then like I came to a point where I was like crying and I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to like redirect a kid if I can't even control myself? So it's obviously gotten better.
Go ahead, Max.
I was just going to say, like, I don't know, my experience, I'd be curious to hear Taylor and Stephanie and even you, David, is that like teaching is like a craft. Like it is like, it's a continual practice as opposed to like, just like, it has more in common with carpentry or plumbing in a certain respect. Like it is a set of skills that you're continually refining and like training happens most aggressively like in the room with the students.
Yep.
Like, so like even at the end of 2 years, I'm not the teacher I want to be yet. Cause like that's a life's journey. That's like I've finished my apprenticeship, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where I'm at. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah, I think to your point, yeah, teaching is an art, it's a craft, it's something that you continuously get better at, right? Like you continuously have to brush up on it. You continuously have to work at it, because you just don't come in, ready day one. And I think, I got a story I'm gonna share, but I'm gonna jump into these comments because we got some folks that have jumped in. So love this. So Rico said earlier, like, lots of love for Indy. So I hope that Indy's number one on your list now. And so we'll make sure we do in a couple years, I'll make sure you guys are still here. And I know that Indy is still number one on your list. Lily Wright says, if anything, TFA proves and validates the continuous training. It is what it makes an effective teacher. Absolutely. Right. I think I've seen that. And I'll tell you my little funny TFA story from a friend I talked with. And then Brandon Brown said, Taylor makes such a good point. The quality of leadership within your placement school makes a difference. Yeah, like for sure. Like it definitely does. Tobias says, do any first year teachers feel like effective teachers? Yeah, the ones that are not being truthful. If a first year teacher tells you they're great, they're on something. I would just say that. They're on something. Let's just say that. Madeline, who is always a fan of the show and jumping in, says one of TFA's greatest strengths is, I believe, the focus on DEI work right now from the start of their careers. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that. That's one of my myths. We're going to definitely address that. But so I taught, it's like my third year teaching, right? And so I had a teacher, first year TFA teacher, walked into summer training and was like, yeah, I'm ready. I did my little 5-year or 5-week, whatever, the intensive training. And so like they're just bragging and, using all the buzzwords, education equity and achievement gap and, those words, education jargon, right? They read the whole book. And so he says, I'm ready. I was like, so tell me about your experience. He's like, I taught some of the toughest kids. I forgot what city they were in. He's like, yeah. And, it was 5th grade. Mind you, this is a high school, right? So he's teaching high school, but he did his placement in 5th grade. Then he says, yeah, I had like 8 of the toughest kids in summer school. I said, 8? Homie, I had 31 my first year teaching, right? Like 8, right? So mind you, after the first quarter, he came back, he said, Dave, man, this is harder than I thought. I was like, yeah, it is. And back to your point, what he said was he didn't get better as a teacher until he sat in the grad school classes, right? So between the grad school classes and then meeting with his other TFA colleagues and saying like, this is what I'm going through. What are you going through? And then being able to share those experiences and having that support system, that's what made him a better teacher. And so I think like it's a combination of the grad school, the support within the cohort that's going to make people a better teacher. But yeah, he was just like, he was ready. He was so ready. And I was just like, homie, this is about to be a rude awakening. So yeah.
So funny because I walked into my summer school classroom and I again probably had 8 kids, right? And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was coming from like me teaching adults previously, but I was so tuned out to what my kids were doing, right? They were literally, like I watched one of my videos, hanging upside down. And it's just one of like Max said, we're finishing like this is our apprenticeship at the end of the day. And you get better from the experience and from learning from other teachers and all of that. And
I think there's Jadon, one of my favorite people. Listen, this was our brainchild, so I'm just glad I was able to facilitate it for sure. The comments are jumping now, and we're about to really get into some of the heat of this. I got, let me see, Tobias Rowe, to the earlier myths about leaving the classroom 2 years. I'm sure you could find the exact number on that. Oh, yep. You could definitely find the exact number. But here's the thing, though. It ain't just TFA. I know folks that went traditional that's bouncing out these classrooms. You hear me? So that's real. And Michael says, I was in Indianapolis teaching fellows. Training was intense, but I agree. You learn some in the summer school training, but become the most effective teacher when you get the guidance from the teacher and great principles. Yeah. Listen, I have an obligation, right, to make sure that I am training and uplifting all my teachers, but specifically those that I know are coming from transition programs, because you didn't go through the 3.5 years in the student teaching and things like that, right? So there just has to be, there's a different learning curve. And, you know, Stephanie, to your point, I'm still chuckling thinking about it. They think classroom management is just smiling at a kid, right? So you don't know what you don't know, right? Until somebody teaches you. So it's just really important that happens. Yep. The fullness of the program is important. It doesn't stop after the summer. So, all right, here we go. Myth number 4. And I didn't even type myth number 4 in here. Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. TFA teachers are not equipped to teach given that they only receive 5 weeks of training, right? So this isn't different, right? So I'm not talking about just being an effective teacher. I'm talking about just being able to teach it all, right? Day one, right? So does the 5 weeks per? It's got to, right?
This thing's been running for 30 years. Like the myth, right? Like, it's like, what else is there to say?
Exactly. No, you're right. I had to ask. Listen, I had to ask because I know people that say they're not ready to teach it. I'm like, come on now. They weren't just sitting around doing kumbaya for 5 weeks. They learned something.
But also, like, when you think about how many people go into careers after undergrad that didn't study that in undergrad, are they also not equipped for their jobs and their positions?
Ooh, you said a word. You said a word right there. Yeah. True that. True that. Stephanie, you know, what it give you? How about this? Each of you tell me what one thing you got from your 5 weeks, right, that you were able to take in day one in your classroom in your school. Take some time to think. Give you some think time. Best practice for teachers. I'll give you think time, and then we'll cold call. Max, you seem like you're ready to go, so I'm gonna go.
All right.
First.
This was like a happy accident. The curriculum I used at summer school was the curriculum that like I've been using for the past 2 years. Like, so like getting my hands dirty, like teaching math, which is a feeder teacher, like I'm not teaching. So like brand new disciplines, like getting used to that, like that work and that sort of steps, like that was invaluable.
I think for me, it was like a reality check. For me, it was like a reality check. I was like, oh, I don't know anything. Like, what did I get myself into? And I'm coming back from Houston to back to Indy. And, but luckily for me, well, kind of luckily, I had a weekend off from like TFA training. And then I started my like school training. So I also had like another 5 weeks of on-school training. So that was really helpful.
What about you, Taylor?
My experience at training was just not pleasant at all. I think the best thing that I took back home brought back home was literally not to do what I did there. It was trial and error, so to speak. So a lot of stuff that I did, I switched up in the classroom. Not necessarily saying it was better, but again, trial and error, just trying to do things differently because it didn't work when I was there.
I'm gonna jump. Lily said, "I'm confused that Buddy was excited at the Institute." Listen, homie was geeked, man. He was geeked. I don't know what to tell you, but that's where I left thinking, "Wow, they really trusted me to do this." That's real. Did you all have that same question? Like, somebody is about to trust me with the lives of children right now, right? Like, let me tell you something. I went to school to do this, right? And you heard in my soliloquy, my passion. But like straight up, after that first year, I said, they about to give me a classroom with more kids, right? Like, this is real talk. So I taught at a high school for 2 years. So I taught a year. I came back the next year, right? I found my juniors who were now seniors. I went to them and apologized for what I thought was the lack of education that I provided them. Because that first year, I'm sure it was terrible. So I apologized to them, right? And so because I know it was bad. It had to be, right? And so, again, folks jumping in the comments, we appreciate that. Got is it Javante? He's agreeing with you. Got some little love here from Laura. Madeline jumped in and said, lifelong learners. You gotta be lifelong learners. If you're not, to Max's point, like, you're gonna suck at this, right? You're gonna get to a point in your career where you're gonna be stuck, where you won't be able to increase your toolkit, right? So definitely. support system with colleagues in and with you. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are close, and we're going to talk about the closeness of TFA a little later. But that's definitely something big. And then think about the micro moments in the classroom. How do you react when a kid cusses in your class you're in charge of, and how many kids do you let go to the bathroom at the same time? Yeah. Hey, well, I don't know if you guys know, so I typically don't talk about, my job, but I'm a principal at Tinley. Yeah, we don't do the cussing, but as far as the bathroom, listen, I tell teachers, first-year teachers, TFA teachers, ITF teachers, you cannot send 5 kids to the bathroom at the same time, right? So 1 boy, 1 girl, wait till they come back, 1 boy, 1 girl. If you send a kid and then 2 more kids raise their hand of the same sex, just know that they're going to the bathroom to play. So always a disclaimer. Always a disclaimer for sure. Myth number 5. Okay, so here we go. This is the big one, right? This is David McGuire's myth. So TFA does not support the work of providing an equitable education for their students.
Can you unpack what you mean by that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, you guys heard my soliloquy, right? And my push, right? And so, and I mentioned, and I'm gonna read it again. Just want to go to her thesis. She wanted to build a school or provide training for, outstanding college graduates to teach in high poverty schools, right? So you're taking brand new teachers, right, who didn't go through a training, who didn't go through school to do this, and you're going to put them in the neediest schools, right? Does Teach for America, over the course of your 2-year commitment, when you say it, do they give you the tools necessary to make sure that you're providing a quality and equitable education for Black and brown children? Because I heard that they don't. I'm asking you, do they? Because the myth is that they don't. So my question is, does TFA give you what you need over the course of your time with them to make sure that you're providing an equitable and quality education for children of color? How was that? Does that help?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I get it. I guess when you think about it, like you said, you're bringing these fresh graduates that have never had any training in the classroom, and you're putting them in these high poverty schools with Black and brown kids. Are you just using them as like guinea pigs, so to speak? And I would say no. I mean, I know we've discussed overwhelmingly just all of the additional training that we get after our 5 weeks at Institute, that they just don't leave us hanging. That is their mission. And we spend so much time throughout the years just digging into that and what we can do to be equitable teachers and make sure our kids have the things that they need. So definitely.
Yeah. I agree with Taylor. Like, they provide us all the necessary tools that we need, the coaching. I remember my first year, I cried to my coach and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm not even doing anything. Because I was like, they can't read. I was teaching kindergarten, so they couldn't even hold a pencil. I was like, how am I supposed to get them from here to here? She's like, you need to take a breath. Like, you're just putting the whole weight on the whole weight of the world on yourself. Like, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I feel like if someone thinks like that, that's in TFA, then they are probably not really paying attention to all the conversations that are occurring, or they're not realizing the impact that they're doing.
Absolutely.
I feel like Teach for America does Indianapolis, and I'm speaking purely from my experience of it, does everything with their power to make that happen. I think of my coaching relationships I've had with my TFA coaches, people who have been in the TFA context for one, and some remained in education for a bit before becoming coaches. And so they have an understanding of our experience and our context, and they have an understanding of our schools in some instances. Some are former Teach for America indie folk. I think of the fact that my past 2 years, I became a better teacher and a better sense of equity and what serving my students with exceptionalities looks like, because I had a Teach for America coach who did special education, who could we could have conversations, and we can sharpen each other on that. And he did everything within his power to support me in my classrooms, and also just how to have difficult conversations with admin, how to have conversations with parents, everything like that. I feel like they do everything within their resources, their graphs, to support their core members. And also part of it's just making sure like to build that core member efficacy of just like asking for help, like cultivating that skill.
Absolutely. And I want to put up these two comments from Madeline Jadon. So she said, I've had many traditionally trained teachers to tell me that they never had the conversation or talked about biases, race, identity, and et cetera. So I feel like the 90% of what we talk about throughout the course member experience is that, right, listen, so I've taught in a charter school, a state takeover school, and I've worked in a township district school, right? And so it wasn't until I was around TFA folks, or like whether they're friends or things like that, where I know these conversations are happening. I'm telling you right now, most of the traditional pathway schools at the universities don't talk about race, right? It's not a pool they want to jump in or even dip their toes in, right? But I think what I've seen and what I've heard from Teach for America and even ITF, but specifically Teach for America, is they're unapologetic about speaking about these things, right? And so whether it's Black, white, Latinx, like there's these conversations about race because predominantly the children that Teach for America serve are students of color, and you can't skate around this issue. You can't skate around these issues with these teachers, whether or not they come from privilege, not privileged, low income, middle class, whatever. Like these conversations are important. Jadon said our DI efforts can definitely improve, but as a professional DI practitioner for the last decade, I can honestly say I didn't start real conversation about race, and it didn't start until TFA, right? Like, so I think TFA is doing the work. So for those that are listening, right, that still have this idea that you guys don't get it, and when I mean get it, it is that this thing of teaching in low-income schools is a fight to give our kids a better opportunity on the runway, right? To get our kids caught up on the runway in this race to a better future and a better life. So like maybe if you can share a specific time within a training or something you heard that was like, man, this is really good. Like I needed this. It relates to like conversation about race, anything like that. Do you guys have any examples that you can share? Because there's a lot of folks listening, right, that don't know what TFA talks about. And so would love to hear from you all, folks that are in a comment about a specific training that stood out to you that talked about race or, equity or things like that.
So I think for me, it was, so at Institute, every once a week, twice a week or something like that, we actually have DEI sessions where we're talking about all of the things, just digging in and doing all of the self-work before we go into these classrooms. And as somebody like myself, who I didn't grow up with all of the privilege, but I don't even think I had realized my privilege until I got into one of those sessions. So one in particular, we had to go around the room, and if you could, if you came from a 2-parent home, or if you went to private school, or if you did all of these different things, you were supposed to put your name on the list, or where you ranked on the spectrum, right? And it was a lot of them. I was like, oh, I'm up there for real. And so I can't, as a Black woman, just go into my classroom and think that I'm going to be able to relate to my kids just because I'm Black. And so I have to understand the things that were different from my childhood and my experiences, and how I can make sure that they have different experiences than what they're projected to have.
I think for me, it was we broke out into smaller groups and discussed how we were racialized, and then how did that affected or enhanced or diminished our education experiences in public schools. And me reflecting on school as it's currently set up is a pretty white socialized experience, and so it reinforces a lot of white supremacist norms about stay quiet, things like that. And so getting to have an earnest conversation where I'm hearing someone else who is of a different identity than me discussing how their experiences and being racialized often butt up against education and didn't allow them to succeed initially like they were, or the way that the compromises they had to make was eye-opening for me and how I want to try and teach.
Absolutely. Stephanie?
I brought it up earlier that I think the biggest lesson that I got was privilege. So we had kind of how Taylor was talking about, we had a whole activity. I think we had a whole week where we talked about privilege, and it was really eye-opening for me because I didn't really think that I came from a place of privilege. And I think I have an interesting experience in TFA Indy in that I'm one of the handful that is not white or Black. So I'm one of the few, the handful, especially there's a small but mighty little population of Latinx, Asian, Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, and I'm missing some other ones. I think that I'm missing some, and it's gonna kill me. But I'm missing some other people that are being represented that are small, but like we're counted. And it's nice to know that even though like I don't see myself with the staff, I know that the staff are trying to do their very hardest to like support me in in any way that they can. And then if I ask, hey, that like this misinformation is occurring within like my core members, they're quick to be like, okay, how can we address this so that the issue in terms of like race isn't misconceptions aren't being occurring within. And like I can think of like, for example, immigration. Immigration is like a hot topic to talk about, and I think it's something that is something that can easily get miscommunicated. There's a lot of misconceptions, and if it comes up, like DACA, TFA started like an initiative. TFA nationwide started like a DACA initiative, and so it's like if you bring the idea to the table, TFA is like more than willing to have those conversations. It's just like someone needs to bring it up so that they notice that it's also an issue that's affecting core members.
Yeah. So I think we've dispelled the myths that I came up with, right? And the myths that we found. But before we close the show, again, this is the Recess Podcast. Max and Taylor and Stephanie are joined with me. We're dispelling some myths of TFA and specifically Teach for America Indianapolis. So to those haters, right? Because we're in the last two segments, and so this last question is to those haters who want to bash the work of Teach for America, and they question your commitment to this fight of educational injustice for students. What do y'all say to them? And I want the folks that are in the comments. This is where I need the whole TFA nation, the whole TFA group, coalition, gang, code, whatever y'all are, TFA folks. Jump in the comments. What do you say to those folks that hate, that just spew venom and negativity about TFA, and just educate them? School some folks for a minute, right? About you all's commitment to this fight. What you guys got to say?
So for me, I think it's bold to base your own experience and blame an entire organization. And I think that's what you see a lot of times is people having poor experiences for whatever reason, and then they want to pin it on an entire organization. And I think that just takes personal growth, right? When you realize that maybe you could have done some things a little different. And don't get me wrong, like TFA is not perfect by any means, but I think especially Indianapolis specifically, they do a lot to make sure that we're good. To make sure that we have all of the things that we need. And I think it just takes communication. So I won't say that things have been all peachy keen and glory for me, but I will say one thing I can hands down say is TFA Indy has had my back the entire time. And they have made sure that I have everything I needed, even when it came to things outside of the classroom. They've just been there for me. And so it's a personal thing, and it's too bad that you went through that. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Stephanie, what do you say to those haters that hate on the work of TFA?
I don't really have a lot, but the few that I can count the ones that have like said something against TFA, and it's like, why don't you get in then? Or why aren't you in TFA? Because obviously why you're talking smack about TFA is because you couldn't get in, or it's mostly why you couldn't get in. Some people that I know that talk smack is because they couldn't get in. So,
listen, you know, I shared that I didn't get in, but you know, it wasn't meant for me. But I think to your point, Stephanie, right? Some of the ones that hate and continue to hate, if you unpack their haterism, it's because they didn't get in and they feel some type of way, right? Yeah. And they just own it and embrace it like I did. I didn't get in, damn it. But guess what? If you're really about the educating of children, you find, you know, again, I was traditionally trained. I wanted the master's degree. So, yeah, you find another way. So absolutely. So Max, what do you say to those haters that hate on the work you guys are doing?
We're here. You going to work with us or not?
Man, say that again. Where's it at? Where's that post there? Hold on. I saw somebody said that. Here we go. Yep. We aren't going anywhere. So please work with us. Absolutely. Like, you know, and that's where let me talk to my principal friends, right? Let me hold on. Those principals that have this thing where I'm not gonna hire somebody that was TFA. and I'm talking about TFA people that like do your 2 years and stay in education, they still won't hire you. That's stupid. That's stupid. Because again, TFA came to Indianapolis specifically because there was a shortage of not just teachers as far as the body, but a shortage of quality trained teachers, right? So if traditional programs in Indianapolis were doing right and we were filling these schools, there wouldn't have been a place for TFA. So why would you not tap into that talent resource? That's just stupid. I'll leave it there. I'm not gonna get a soliloquy. I'm gonna post these comments before we get out of here. So, made a great point. A lot of the hate I saw was from people individual experience. Hey, yeah, people self-care, man. Self-care saves lives, and people have some other personal things that they didn't know about. Okay, real quick, everybody. I do this every show. Take a moment. This is Auntie Lauren, Auntie Peter. I want to wave to Auntie Lauren. She is like the Indianapolis education auntie. So got to give her some love. Auntie Lauren, love you much. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, Tobias has a very long, I'm going to post this quickly. So it's really long. So it's not scripted who counts, not the man who points out how strong man stumbles or where this is deep. Okay. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena. We know where that came from. Whose face is marred by the dust, sweat, and blood, who strives violently, who errs, who comes short again and again because there's no effort without error and shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotion, who spent absolutely. We know where that's from. The man in the arena. Shout out that. Got it here again. There we go. TFA 09, still living to serve at a charter school in downtown Chicago. Look, there you go. So look, may not be in Indy, but again, it's still in the works, still in education, still providing quality education. Love it. Thank you, Auntie Lauren. We're appreciate the Recess podcast. And then she says hi to you all too. So hey, if you guys don't listen, if you don't know Auntie Lauren, y'all got to meet Auntie Lauren. I'm telling you, she's the best, and definitely need for you all to meet her. So we're at the last portion of the show. And so I always close it. I give all my guests an opportunity to share whatever they want to share. So I don't know if you guys have your own thing that you do or shout out your school. It's recruitment season, right? So maybe you want to talk about the school you work at, hit to get more recruitment, because I don't know if your principal is watching or will be watching. So I'm going to give you this time, each of you, to kind of just whatever you want to share, whether it's about the previous conversation that I had in the beginning about what's going on in society. If you now feel comfortable enough to speak about that, or if you want to talk about your school, or just anything else that you want to share about you, about this fight for education, I want to give you that space before we close out. So I'm going to start with, wait a minute, who's the newest to TFA?
Taylor.
Is that you, Taylor? Taylor, okay, yeah. I thought that's what you said, because I think Max and Stephanie, you guys are 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Taylor, you're going first. The floor is yours. Whatever you want to talk about, share.
All I would say is just like to all educators is, first of all, show up as the person that you want to be seen as, and that being in your classroom, in your schools, and advocate for your kids. You are like their main advocate when it comes to school every day. And I'm not gonna lie, it's as we've seen, there are a lot of Karens in the schools, as teachers, as administrators, and it is up to us to stand in the gap of that, right? Don't let that reach your children. And what else? And just like keep it real with your kids at all times. You would be surprised that even like myself, I have second graders, how much they understand because they're going through so much themselves. And they need somebody who's not going to BS around all of the different things just because they're kids. So keep it real with them. I had a conversation with the little boy about something that he did that put him on punishment, and we just started summer break. And I was just really just filling him in on what is going on in the city right now that he had no idea about. So just like keeping it real with your kids, and like they're humans, they're just small. That's all I got.
Jeffrey Carrington.
Let's see. Okay, so let's do it this way. I don't know if you know who got in the TFA first. Stephanie, Max, which one of y'all got in first? Do you know who got in first?
I was last.
Well, Max, you're next.
All right.
There you go. Hey.
There you go. All right. I think my big thing is like echoing that. You just got to be your authentic self. Like, I'm a theater dude. I'm really goofy. Like I paint they're chipped right now, but I paint my nails. And so like I get 5-year-old boys who like, we have a conversation about that, right? Like I paint my nails. It's something fun I do with my kid. Like I don't care. It doesn't make me less of a man or a person. Like, and we can have that conversation about that. Second thing, like shout out to my placement school, which I am leaving, KIPP Indy. They've treated me wonderfully. They've developed me in a lot of ways as a special educator. Shout out to Cold Spring, where I'll be going to work with Cody Stipes and some awesome people. And a big shout out to like, you talked about, our friends and stuff. Like I got through Teach for America because of my special education cohort. Like we were stuck together and we could share our unique problems and unique contexts and really support each other. And I want to shout all of them out because they're amazing human beings. And I owe a debt of gratitude to them.
Absolutely. Stephanie, last but not least.
I definitely say that you need to find ways to take care of yourself. That was something that I really struggled and still to this point struggle with, which is why I'm always picking up hobbies every 2 days. And Taylor can attest. Right now it's painting furniture. Shout out to Circle City Prep, especially my coworkers, Taylor, Javante, Jazz, who are in the chat. Shout out to them who have gotten me through this e-learning. Yeah, thanks for having us on this podcast. Hey, this is the first. I love doing
this. I want to, and I'm going to go into my soliloquy. But first, I want to say this. Listen, I did a lot of, y'all joked around about me and my experience with TFA and like the beginning, my evolution for my love of TFA. But I want to say this, and I'm specifically talking to the individuals that work for Teach for America, Indianapolis right now that are doing the work. As a school principal, and somebody who, first of all, I love my East Side babies. I joke, I'm East Side adopted. So I love everything about this work that I do. Every day I get amazed with Teach for America, Indianapolis, because I see the change that's happening. I see how Teach for America, Indianapolis is really diving into this fight for a quality education in Indianapolis. And we talked about our activism, right? For me, activism is education, right? I'm willing to sacrifice everything that I built personally as a principal and as an educator to shout out those Amy's and those Karens that are trying to oppress our children. And I'm willing to lose it all, right? For the sacrifice of Black children. And I appreciate Teach for America because Teach for America is equipping teachers like you all and other teachers to make sure for those of that try to make sure that they shut you up, that they're building a big enough platform and a big enough coalition that you won't be able to be quiet. And so I want to first thank those leaders at Teach for America Indianapolis for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you as a principal. I appreciate you as an educator. And I appreciate you as just somebody who's born and raised in Indianapolis. To you three and to the rest of Teach for America teachers, I appreciate you because you are my brothers and my sisters in this work. So definitely keep it up. You guys got a platform here with the Recess Podcast. Anytime you guys want to come on, I welcome you. We can do this conversation again. I got some other ideas we can talk about for Teach for America. So definitely want you guys to do that. So again, we'll get these last comments up. There's Jasmine and then Madeline. Yep, absolutely. I appreciate you. I got a show for you, Madeline. So if you're listening, I'm gonna reach out to you. I got an idea I need your help with. And then there's Javante again. Much love there. Auntie Lauren says love for Teach for America. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Appreciate those that are tuning in. They're coming in. Jadon, absolutely I love you too, sis. There he is. There he is right there. Hey. Yes. Hey. That soliloquy was for you, sir. I appreciate your work that you're doing. You and I had conversations offline about a lot of things. I know your leadership is guiding the work definitely at Teach for America, so I appreciate it. Those tuning in, again, this is in the Recess Podcast. If you're first time tuning in, share this video. I'm going to post the link for Anchor for the actual recording. Taylor, Stephanie, if you could share it with your friends, I'll make sure I send it to you guys in an email. I'll post it on my Facebook page and social media for those that missed it. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be back next week for my first solo show of the Recess Podcast. I'm going on solo. Ooh. So I've done 8 episodes where I've been having guests. So I'm gonna do my first solo show.
The
So
spotlight.
it's called Self-Care Save Lives. So it's gonna talk about a little bit what's going on here. It's gonna talk about education and how it's important that we got to take care of ourselves as educators. So want you guys to tune in again, 7:30 p.m. Standard Time. This has been the Recess Podcast featuring Max, Taylor, and Stephanie, and also Teach for America Indy. And we're out, people. Take care.